How do you know the good handlers of your money, the good people to help you in this, as opposed to the bad players? So, I mean, because the letters behind the name is what most people think. If they've got the letters behind the name, if I see XYZ behind somebody's name, then that must make them smart, and it must also mean that they're somehow checked, I think people think. So how do you know the good ones from the bad?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a general asset allocation, sort of a how do you pick your advisor question. And I think you're right. The numbers and the names, the letters behind the name, that speaks largely to the character quality of diligence for them and maybe discipline. It also speaks to their intelligence. They have to be smart to be able to go through the certification process. What it doesn't speak to is their ethos. You know, you can say that there's 3 types of advisors, right? There's the constituent, there's the comrade, and then there's the confidant. And the constituent is for what you're for as a client, and the comrade is sort of against what you're against. But what's hard is to find the person who's the confidant, who's really for you. And to be able to determine that, you almost have to have qualitative questions that are different from the ones that you can identify by the letters in the back of the name.
Okay.
So going through a screening process starts with what you want. And if you have that very clearly in your mind before you walk into the advisor, you're able to shape the questions around that and see how they respond, as opposed to having them drive the I want question.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's really good. And so for people who are out there and maybe they've never sought the advice of anyone, maybe money is relatively new to them, what's your best advice to those people?
Yeah, it's not easy because the amount of information that they're flooded with today makes it very difficult for them to figure out where to start even in that process. I think the best place to start is clearly going to be someone that you know who is a confidant in your life, who has someone that they know who is a confidant in theirs.
There you go.
You have to start with someone who can actually break through some of those first and early barriers of understanding about who that person is at the heart level. And then you start testing out their competencies. So if you think about trust, it's really 2 components, right? It's character and it's competency. You can identify someone's competency by the letters behind their name. What you can't clearly identify is their character without a reference point from someone that you know and you care about that cares about you.
And you certainly can't count on government agencies these days. I mean, they're all targeting, they're all corrupt. We look at the infractions by the NSA, the SEC, the IRS, and you know that you can't trust government to say, this is a good person, rubber stamp them. Is there a sort of an Angie's List or a Yelp? I tend to rely on Yelp for restaurants and hair places and things like that. Is there something like that that people can go to?
Well, the governing agency for advisors, there are 2 broad or general categories. There are those who receive commissions as compensation, and there are those who receive fees. For those who receive commissions for their compensation, there's an organization that's known as FINRA, F-I-N-R-A. You can go on the FINRA website and you can actually search a broker by name or by their firm name and drill down to find out more about them. You can find out if their U4 or U5 has ever been impacted, which tells you they've been under regulatory command in some form or another, been delinquent in some way, or worse, have filed bankruptcy or perhaps even been in litigation in some form. So you can find that information there. On the other side, you have the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. Same thing. You can go on that website and you can search for someone who's in a fee-based environment, like a registered investment advisor. And those are just 2 forms of search opportunities. But you can drill down and you can find out everything's public about the way they've treated their clients in the past and about how their competency has led them to either be successful or not.
I don't trust those government agencies. I like the more privatized ones. But I want to ask you this, regarding real estate specifically, if people are, you know, maybe, for example, I own real estate in another state right now, and I don't have a way to know because I don't live there and I can't really feel how vibrant the market is. If I want to sell, if I'm thinking about selling, is there a good sort of clearinghouse site where you can go to figure out how real estate is in that particular region?
A clearinghouse site, that speaks to it being more securitized than real estate really is. The answer to that question is if you don't have boots on the ground in that local area that you trust to be able to give you sort of the demographic trends and the actuality of what rents should be versus what you're getting, there is really no site to do that. You're going to have to speak to a real estate professional. And there are 2 types. There are those that are operators, that from the ground up, they understand the real estate market, they understand how to lease and how to rent, they understand they have tenant relationships across the country where they can fill a vacancy rather quickly. Then you have financial investors who understand how to structure the deal and how to bring capital to the deal. But for your sake, I would say this. I would say there are very few people who are capable of managing real estate outside of their geographic area. If you can't drive to it, you've just increased the risk level significantly from those that you can actually go to and kick and feel and drink coffee at the restaurant that you own. I'd strongly recommend you get someone in that local area, has a local presence, and is very familiar with the trends and the dynamics that are going on in that particular place.
And as far as commercial real estate investment right now, if that was on my list, what would you recommend in terms of genre specifically? Yeah,
genre as in product type perhaps.
Yes.
I can tell you what Vision-Wise Capital is investing in, I feel most comfortable with, is retail, multifamily residential, and multi-tenant industrial. I want something
because the real estate market has been down, so the rental market is up, you're saying. So investing in multifamily kind of dwellings, especially probably in California, where
you'll find that in the last 8 years, the rental market, the actual rental rates have not declined significantly. It's been an amazing process because the people that were moving out of their homes in 2008, 2009 were moving into apartments. So the demand for apartment living was actually quite strong.
Right.
What you'll find is, though, you'll want real estate today that's number one, paying an income stream. And number two, you want that income to be flexible. So the best you can get to monthly renewable income, the better you are in fighting off an inflationary hedge, which is really what we're headed to. I mean, we're unlikely to see interest rates go down from here, and it's very common for the FOMC not to be able to adjust interest rate to cause inflation to stagnate or to level off, but instead there'll be some hyperinflation in the next 3 to 5 years.
All right, thank you so much for being on the show. Sanford, where can we find you online?
VisionWiseCapital.com.
VisionWiseCapital.com.